Hello, everybody. When someone makes their very first purchase within your mobile game or your online business, your next question is, should I offer them the same price point to convert on or a different price point? Well, today I'm going to walk you through an analysis that will help you decide this. What we're going to do is we're going to look at monetizers and their very first purchase price or conversion price and see the percentage of those that over time decide to convert on a different price point. So let's go ahead and move over to MySQL and I'll show you how to do this for your own business. Okay, so we're going to start out with a revenue transaction table and just identify the very first purchase price for our monetizers. Here's a quick view of our revenue table. It's just revenue transactions per customer. So all we need to do here is select the fields that we need. So it's going to be customer ID, purchase date, purchase date time, the purchase amount. So this is a price that they converted on. And then we're going to use a window function to help us identify the very first transaction per monetizer. Partition by, so we want to do this per customer. And we want to order these revenue transactions by the purchase date time. And the default is ascending. So the very first transaction will get a value of 1. The second transaction, if it exists, gets a value of 2. The third transaction gets a value of 3, and so on and so forth. We're going to call this transaction index. Great, let's wrap this in a subselect and call it rev. And from this subselect here called revenue, let's make sure the transaction index field is equal to 1. Basically taking this data and filtering it for the very first revenue transaction per customer, because we're only interested in the very first conversion price per monetizer. Okay, great. Now let's also bring up the fields from the previous subselect. And really, we only need a few of these. So let's go ahead and remove purchase date time. We don't need that. We do need the customer ID. We do need the purchase date. And then we also need the first purchase price. And let's actually just rename this to first purchase price. Can rename this to first purchase date, just to make sure that this is clear in our heads. Okay, great. So if we just run this query right here, it's going to return the very first purchase date and purchase price per monetizer for this online business. Okay, wonderful. So in this first row, we can see we have a customer ending in 514 that made their very first purchase July 9th, 2023, and at a price of $29.99. So the question that we're trying to answer is, over time, did this customer ending in 3514 make a subsequent purchase that wasn't $29.99. That was maybe a price point above this value or below this value. So that's something we're going to answer together as we complete this analysis. Okay, great. And that's actually a perfect lead in to what we need to do next. What we're trying to see is we have this monetizer that converted on this price point, and over time, did they subsequently purchase or convert on a different price point? So the operative word here is over time, and we are using days since first purchase as our metric or measure to track time since their first conversion. So what we need to do next is get those leading date values into our analysis. So what we're going to do is we're going to join over to a date table and bring across all dates that are greater than or equal to the first purchase date so that we can see per leading date value, did that monetizer make a subsequent purchase that was different than the original price point that they converted on? So we can actually kill two birds with one stone and do it right here. So right above our where clause, we'll do left join. We'll call this table dates on dates.date has got to be greater than or equal to the purchase date. Now, on a technical level, let me show you what's going to happen. So here is our current table. We have our monetizers, their very first purchase date, and then their very first conversion price, right? So if we look at row 3, this customer ID ending in 535, they first converted on February 23rd, 2024 at a price point of $4.99. Now, when we join over to this date table, it's going to bring across all dates that are greater than or equal to this February 23rd, 2024. So we're going to get this same value or date value again, and all future values running up through the present. So it's actually going to be an expansive join where it's going to take this one record and expand it to include all of those leading date values. So that is essentially what's going to happen. And let me give you a little bit of visibility into this date table. And here are those dates, ascending from the very first date or the date of our product launch all the way up through the present day. So that's in the second column here in this table. Okay, wonderful. So here's the join itself. It's saying, hey, if the date value is greater than or equal to the first purchase date or the purchase date, then bring that date value across. So because we want these leading dates, we have to put it up here in our select statement, and we can just rename this leading dates. If you recall, in our analysis on the x-axis, we were looking at days since first purchase. So let's add that metric into our query right now so that we have it. We'll do a date diff between this leading date value and the first purchase date. We'll call this days since first purchase. Okay, great. So let's look at one player example together. We'll do and the customer ID is going to be equal to this value right here, copy field. Let me put some white space in here so that I know to delete this player example once we're done. And we will do an order by, and we'll do it by this leading date value. Okay, great. So before the join, we just had this one record here, just this one singular record right here. This customer ending in 3514, making their first purchase July 9, 2023, with a first purchase price or conversion price of $29.99, right? But then after our join, we brought in all dates that are greater than or equal to this value. So it brought across the first purchase date value again, and then all ascending dates or leading dates going up through the present. So it took this one record and expanded it to include all of these leading date values. Cool. So what are we going to do next? The very next thing we're going to do is, for each one of these leading date values, we're going to check to see if this player has made a purchase that was not $29.99. So to state it again, what we're going to do is, for this customer ending in 514, we're basically going to join over to our revenue transaction table, where the revenue transaction date is less than or equal to this leading date value, and check to see if they made a subsequent transaction that was at a price that was not the original conversion price of $29.99. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let me remove this player example. We're going to call this player. Okay, great. So our subselect is ready. Now, the only thing we need to do now is join to our revenue transaction table again. And what we need to check for is say, hey, for this specific player right here, let's bring across all revenue transactions that are basically greater than or equal to this first purchase date and less than or equal to this leading date, and see if there was a revenue transaction that was different or not equal to $29.99. If there was a revenue transaction that occurred sometime between this interval here, let's flag it and say that, hey, by July 16, 2023, this customer actually made a conversion or purchase on a price point that was different than the original first purchase price of $29.99. Cool. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to reuse fact player revenue. So left join. Call this rev, and we'll do it on the player.customer ID equals rev.customer ID, and the rev.purchase date has to be less than or equal to the player.leading date. or leading dates. And here's where the magic happens. So we're going to do this. Case when the purchase amount from table 2 is not equal to this first purchase price here, then we know that by this leading date or leading date value, this customer has made an additional purchase at a price point that was different than their original price point. So when the purchase amount does not equal the first purchase price, then 1 else 0 end. And we're going to do a max here because this is just a flag. And let's go ahead and group this data. And let's run a few records. Okay, great. So here's a sample 1,000 records for us to look at. So we have this customer here ending in 273 that made their very first purchase July 16, 2024 at a first purchase price of 99 cents. And what you can see here is that on this converted on different price column, the flag is evaluating to true, is evaluating to 1. So what does that mean? It means that for this customer who made their first purchase on a 99-cent bundle, by this leading date value has converted or bought again and at a different price point than this original 99-cent bundle or price point. So now that we have this information, we're ready to aggregate our data and analyze it. Let's remove this limit 1,000. We can call this ag. We want the day since first purchase. We also want the first purchase price. These are going to be our dimensions, basically the fields that we're grouping up to. And then we'll do a count, monetizers. And then we're going to sum this value right here, converted on different price. And let's make sure we group this data. And let's run the final query. Okay, great. So here is our data. We have the count of monetizers dimensionalized or grouped up to their first purchase price and days since first purchase so that we can see what type of behavior is going on over the course of time, and then the count of monetizers who converted on a different price point by this time element here, or days since first purchase. Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and move this over to Excel so that we can wrap up and finalize our analysis. Okay, so here we are in Excel. The only thing we need to do is create another field, and we will call it percent monetizers purchase new price point. So we're just going to take the count of monetizers who converted on a different price point divided by the total monetizers and create that ratio or that percentage there. Let's go ahead and move this over to a pivot table. So select all your data, go insert pivot table, okay. And we're gonna do days since first purchase on the rows, first purchase price across the top for the columns, and then we're gonna add the percent monetizers purchase new price point. So let's go to design and we will remove the grand totals. Great. Let's turn this into actual price points with the $sign. Okay. And then we'll do a label filters. We'll do the first year and a half since their very first purchase date. Okay. Let's go ahead and chart this out. Okay, so let me go ahead and increase the size of these values right here. It's important to have some visibility so that we can connect on what's happening here, at least strategically, for this demo online business that we're looking at. Let me increase the legend as well. Okay, great. So let me just walk you through what we have. So what we did is we looked at all monetizers and we looked at their very first conversion price. And then by day since first purchase, we're calculating the percentage of those that have also converted a subsequent or second time, but on a different price point. Now, the strategic value here is that, as you can see with this chart, only about 40% of monetizers go out and convert on a different price point, meaning when someone makes a first purchase, 60% of that population continues to convert on that very same price point. So with that information, if you were to apply it to this demo business, you would say, okay, what we need to do is offer this monetizer the same price point, but maybe change the value that's attached to that same price point. It could be in the way of more virtual currency, or it could be additional add-ons. And then if that doesn't work, you can say, okay, maybe this monetizer would be interested in converting in a different or another price point. And as you analyze this data a little further, you can see here that if the monetizer converted on a higher price bundle, then they're slightly more likely to convert on lower price bundles. So this is interesting, right? So if someone's first conversion price was at a very high price, then they have all of these lower priced bundles beneath them, making them a viable choice or option for a future conversion. However, unlike the $99 bundle, monetizers who made their very first conversion on the 99-cent bundle don't have any price points underneath them, so they were less likely to make a subsequent purchase at a different price point. So anyway, this data is just specific to this demo fictional business that I created. However, the technical walkthrough has value in the application of your own business so that you can strategize around how to deliver subsequent offers to first-time monetizers. Thank you very much for joining this tutorial. Have a great day.